Welcome to another episode of Dengo Thoughts. This time I'm talking to Giovanni Carbajal, aka BOXBOYGIO. Gio is an incredibly talented producer and director coming up in the underground scene of rap in LA. Together with his brother Yair, they have a production company called Box Boys. They produce music videos and now started producing their own events. As always, I pick my guests very carefully. I want to make sure that the people who I talk to inspire me in some form. Gio is very young, he's 23, but already at that age, he's making some serious strides when it comes to music video production and events. What I found very interesting is that Gio has a very positive vibe about life. It's not like he has it easy, but wherever there's an obstacle, he sees opportunity. That is invaluable. If more people will follow the steps of people like him, we will see a very different world. Now, I know it sounds like a kumbaya kind of idea, but you know what? It's not that far-fetched. If we all look at life as an opportunity to be better and to make it better, we will have a different world. Now I'm gonna let the conversation speak for itself, so I'm not gonna waste too much time here. But I wanna tell you that I was extremely inspired by my conversation with Gio to know that the younger generation holds some seeds of true hope, of development as humanity. We're gonna see much more of people like Gio, I believe, in the years to come. And that makes me very happy. We all dream of a better world, but we have no idea how to construct one. Well, my conversation with Gio gave me some hope. His talent and drive are real markers of greatness, and I believe this kid is gonna go very far, so watch out for him coming up. And now, without further ado, I give you my conversation with Boxboy Gio. Giovanni,
We're live.
How are you, brother?
Amazing, bro.
I appreciate you making the time and coming. Oh, no, absolutely. I'm very, very excited about talking to you. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm talking to you because you, even though you're not hugely known yet, you're making some ripples in the underground space. You started from, did I get it right that you started from production? That was the initial thing, right? And then you guys slowly moved to now producing your own events, right? Mm-hmm. So set up the stage for a second, and I'll tell you later what is the main reason why I really want to talk to you. But who are you? What is your main thing, and where are you guys going now with your production company?
Yeah, man. So our our company name is Box Boys, and I run with my brother. So we have our handle is Instagram is BOXBOYGIO, and he's BOXBOY here. But that's just us two, and we run Box Boys initially starting as music videos. And then from there on, grabbing our connections from all the music videos, we decided to throw our first show within last year. And then from so on, now that's where kind of things have led on from the music videos to now hosting our third festival this June.
What's the name of the festivals?
Box Fest. So a lot of it has to do with the name Box. Okay. But that's all.
Is there a story behind that? Or just
Box Boys, yeah. So to keep it short, my brother is the one that started that with his high school friends. And it was initially supposed to be a collective inspired by, I don't know if you've heard of Odd Future.
No.
Like Tyler, the Creator, and Taco, that whole group. Okay. Way back. So it's almost like Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Take your time, unpack that if you feel like it's important for the story.
Yeah, I mean, that's where he initially was working with. And those 7 friends he had in high school at that time completely lagged out within the week. They were like, hey, we're not doing this. So my brother stayed with the name, stayed with the company, and he was running that while I was doing my own thing as music videos as well too, but just under my name, Giovanni Carbajal. So within that year I was doing
What's your brother's name, by the way?
Yair. That's his name. So after I was doing my own thing with music videos, I noticed he was doing the exact same thing. About like 10 months, almost within a year of him doing that, we decided to merge into one, and that's where the BOXBOY Yair and BOXBOY Gio came in under the company name Box Boys. So it's a collective of just 2 brothers.
Got it.
And that's pretty much where we ran in. So it's just us kind of running around the underground world, working with these underground artists, and then taking an initiative to now host these underground shows. And it feels surreal because it's just actually, it's making damage now too. So we're able to see the results, and people are coming to our shows based off the artists we kind of grab into one big night, So it's
It's so surreal when you create something on that.
It is, man.
And all of a sudden people show up and they enjoy and they have fun.
I was just thinking about this yesterday, and it still feels unreal. Like, I'm looking at the photos and the videos, and these are artists my brother listens to as well too, and same with me. So it's kind of nice to see these all these artists all in one room, organized by me and my brothers, or my brother and I. So
that's insane. That is, and I might mention that you guys are also pretty young. You're 23. You said 18.
18, yeah. Correct.
That's crazy. So but you guys are definitely thinking outside the box.
That's our slogan. That's our bio.
Oh, it is.
It says think outside the box.
Okay, no, because it's So the reason that I got interested in talking to you is because I met you at a little production gig that you were hired by a mutual friend, by Casso.
Casso at the time.
And there's something about the way that you work, and also about the creative process. I've been following you ever since, and about the way that you guys shoot your music videos and produce them and edit them. It's definitely not like the regular, like, again, people are always trying to be creative, obviously, in that space. But you guys seem to be like really taking it to the next step, because it seems like you guys are always trying to push the envelope with creativity. Like you don't just, before we started shooting this thing, you showed me how you were just fucking with this thing where, you know, you said you take some soap and oil, and like, again, we've all seen this stuff, like, you know, like there's some stock footage of this, which is like essentially those, it's essentially like patterns in soap and water, and it kind of looks like galaxies in space. But the fact that you do this just for fun, just to kind of keep the wheel going of creativity, that I think it really speaks to why, when you produce a music video, and obviously I'm gonna leave links to all your outlets, why they look so unique. And one of the things that I'm trying to do with Fuck Your Brand is also bring awareness for people who think like that, because I personally believe that it's something that is not reserved for the few. But in order to get to a certain level of creative endeavor and ability, you do have to put in the work. Just like you put in the work in knowing how to do your job, or knowing how to, anything else. This is like another component that has to be in place in order to make something look seamless. Or to look,
exactly.
And, like, for example, one of those music videos that I saw the first time I spoke to you and you showed me what you did. Do you remember which one it was and what artist it was?
It might have been the one and only music video. Was it Move?
Yeah.
Might have been Move, where the video clips were displaced and it was like space spiraling.
Yes.
Correct.
And one of the things that stood out to me as an editor myself about it is that usually when there's a lot of components of something like this, the tendency is to kind of drown in things. So it's almost like you just kind of throw things in, but it's a real signature of mastery in the works, when you see that there's a lot of things going on, but each one of them has a place. Yeah. Nothing in there, again, my eye is trained enough to notice that nothing in there was just thrown in there just to have. Like everything kind of had a place, either because it was transitioning to something else to make it look like nothing happened, or it was part of the whatever the music was actually expressing. I was very impressed by this.
Thanks.
So tell me, first of all, how did you first get into production? What was the first
production? So this goes,
or maybe even just shooting.
Just shooting, yeah. So going back, I would say when I was about 16, 17, still in high school. And it was all from starting the sport skimboarding. And then this is where I got into starting with just literally iPhone edits. I would film my friends with my phone, and then from there on, it led to picking up a GoPro. And all those little things for about a year, I was just stuck in that, making edits for all these homies. And then I got into working with the professional skimmers. By then I had my first DSLR, and then so it was about 2 years in, then I realized, like, hey, this camera stuff's pretty sick. And then I had an injury that made me stop the sport for about 9 months. So then I was still working with the camera. I was like, dang, so I literally can't be in the water for 9 months. I have the camera in my hands though, so I want to at least use all that energy from not being able to...
Wait, I'm sorry, you were surfing? I think I missed that.
Yeah, skimboarding. It's similar to surfing.
Okay,
so that's the sport I was with that got me to pick up a camera. And then because of that injury I had, I tore my hamstring. I wasn't able to do any skimming for 9 months. So that's where I had all my time onto the camera. And then from there, I was doing the same thing. It was just purely out of fun. And I was picking up the camera just to do edits. And then within 1 or 2 months of doing that, I was like, hey, this is I like this a lot more now. Like, I want to see if I can make some money out of this. So then that's when I used the power of social media and started messaging everyone, companies, corporate jobs, and opening businesses, and anything that involved video. And I was like, if this business needs a video, this was before the music stuff too. And I was like, if anyone that needs a video, I would love to just apply what I can do. And like, obviously with the low skill set that I had, I was still just confident enough to just push it and push it. And then from there on, my brother saw that things were changing on that end. And I've always been super passionate about music. So then once I realized there was a small amount of success with like finally getting $100, $200 within like the small gigs, and that's why I was like, okay, I could probably change the direction and take this into music too. So the same concept I did with just messaging companies, I now did it to the artist, and then their labels and managers and whatnot, but mainly the artists. And I would just go through their suggestions, copy and paste a simple message like let's film, and then from there on, as I was doing that, learning more production stuff. I was in school at the time too, but also I found more benefits out of learning from YouTube, Skillshare, and any websites out there that would just give me knowledge and creating my own internships and shadowing someone that'd be better than me. And that was my school and my end. So then I realized that was more successful to me. And then I realized school wasn't for me because it was just at a slower pace. And what we were seeing as success, it was working way better and faster for us. So my brother caught on to what I was doing too. He did the same thing and dropped out of school. And then we learn our own production from just shadowing everyone that's better than us, school, internet, and constant learning. So that's pretty much how it took us to the next level from learning into production. To this day, we still do that too because we never want to plateau. It's always a learning game to us, and that's what kind of fuels us to just try something new because it's fun to see something new come out of you. Like, dang, I did this. This came out of my head, this, and then that's the exciting part of it. So you just keep going and learn some more stuff, and then apply and trial and error with all the production stuff we learned to this day too.
When you decided to move to producing more music videos, was it a decision was because of like financially it seemed to be more lucrative, or you just wanted to touch something?
It was less.
Yeah, because usually like businesses pay more, so that's what.
Yeah,
is it
businesses
just because
were paying more for sure, but that's where I felt like my creativity wasn't being used at its full potential now too.
It's a little bit robotic.
Yeah, it became super robotic, and it was cool because at least I got to try it enough to say it wasn't for me, and that's where I was like, hey. And then starting off, like now we're able to balance out a little bit more success with the financial part of it in the music industry. But as the first year, starting to just beginning to network, it was really tough to even get $300 for a music video or $500 for a music video.
Yeah. But that's the thing with music videos is that you gotta reach a certain level. Like with businesses only businesses that can afford to pay for commercials.
Exactly.
And they're already kind of running, so that's why it's kind of like it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
But with music videos, you still have artists which kind of doing everything for the least amount of money.
Always, yeah.
Always,
to this
right?
day, yeah.
Well, yeah, but then when you reach a certain level of like type of artist. Not type of artist, but like a certain certain level of artists, then there's a little bit more money in it. But still, it's very, very difficult because there's always like this, like it's like, hey, don't you want to be creative? It's kind of like that's the game.
Exactly, and it also does get competitive in that realm too, So like
as far as what?
Stepping into the music side, because now everyone can pick up a camera, whether it's just an iPhone like we talked about earlier, or if it takes the next level as a big production level too, but. That's the fun part about it too. Like I love the friendly competition, but I still focus on my own self as like me surpassing myself. Like I don't worry about who's doing better than me or who's finding more success. It's just what am I doing to better myself the next day. That's so because I do get it. Sometimes I get caught in times where I'm like, dang, these kids are young, or this kid's at 28 and he's already way up here where I thought I could be. But it's like you gotta close up and not think about these things and realize like we got it all in front of you, and you gotta get yourself inspired and not envy anything you see. So like everything you see is just fuel to inspiration. And that's what I tell my brother too.
But your generation is pretty like people are making way bigger and way crazier things at a pretty early on. Like for you, it seems like 23 is very young. So like when I was 23, people weren't even thinking along those lines. It was like a very, very different kind of world. I think maybe because I don't even know if it's only technology. It might also be that, how humans always develop.
Yeah.
And it might be that it just happens to be the case. It's just like literally, just like technology accelerates, it might be that genetically we also accelerate. I don't know. I think that scientifically, like as far as like what like genetics has to say about this, that's not true. But something tells me that there's something here that is not being fully... like there's something here that we're missing. That's what it seems like to me. I have two nephews. They're 4 and almost 2. Mm-hmm. They're not like kids that I met 10 years ago.
Yeah,
they're a different thing.
I agree because even
have you met little kids nowadays? They're like
because we grew up where the phones weren't around. They're growing up into the screens.
But they're barely interacting with the screens. Mm-hmm. What I mean is that it seems again it might be purely my impression. Yeah. But my, I guess, hypothesis here is that something is going on. Like there's some kind of an acceleration that is not just technological. I don't know. It seems like they are just wiser. Like they kind of sometimes they have like retorts. Like okay, so for example, the older one, like when he's almost 5 or almost 4. My sister's gonna kill me. But anyways, he has these. Like moments that are, I can't believe that a kid does that because it's like it shows like higher processing. So for example, he registers sometimes what you did and you can see he did, but he's not going to say anything.
Yeah.
That's a very adult kind of way of doing it. He's just kind of look at you,
Like
and you see he saw, like, he registered something, like, you ignored me, or, like, I wanted to play and you ignored me. But he's not going to say anything. He's just move on with his day, and, like
a good quiet
observer. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I had another encounter with a young daughter of a friend of mine, and, I mean, he's, like, insanely brilliant musician, so, like, his mind is, like, genetically, she's probably also kind of, like, got a lot of that.
Yeah.
But she was like 3, and he was reading her a bedtime story, and I didn't see them for, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. So I only saw her when she was a baby, and then I saw her then. And we're sitting there, and he was reading her bedtime story, and then he was done, and I was like, hey, her name is Y. I'm like, why? The last time I saw you, you were a baby. Mm-hmm. And then she looks at me and she goes, and? I was like,
answer,
what
right?
the fuck? I was fucking schooled by the thing.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's fucking crazy. So I guess my point is that it might be the case that still, even though nowadays it seems like more obvious, I think that this generation, like the 20-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, they are, yes, they're also going into a world of, like, technology is way more advanced, but they also have, like, a different mindset. It seems to be more clear to them that you gotta get on it. Yeah, like, it's not something that you should just, like, there's less slackers, it seems. I don't know. So it's like, it's a good competition.
I agree with that, actually. Yeah. I could see that myself. Yeah. With people around us. And kids, the younger kids, at least.
So you said you were, before you started with production, you were doing, what is it called again?
Skimboarding.
Skinboarding?
Yeah.
Skimboarding. I don't know.
So it's very similar to skateboarding. Surfing and
is that the thing that you run into the ocean?
Yeah, so it's like you glide. It's the initial start of the sport was just sliding on the sand, and then kind of just doing shove-its and 360 shove-its and whatnot. But it's evolved into a point where you could slide out and plane out like 30 feet and catch waves that are probably the size of your wall right here, and then
go back?
fully ride it like a surf wave.
That's fucking crazy.
So and there's some pretty like you can get some lengthy rides and ride them for a while, and that's the cool part of it. So I don't know. I've surfed, I've snowboarded and skated, and it's like a mixture of all those into skimming. So that's why I kind of always liked it too, and it's just an easy sport to like. I mean, learning is tough
for you,
but for me, it felt natural.
So how did you tear your hamstring?
Just not stretching, man. I was just running for about an hour.
Oh, literally just not, you
running,
didn't like
running with the board, and then once I was dropping it, running at the full sprint, getting my feet onto the board. Once my left leg came off the ground to hop on, I felt the explosion on my left calf, and literally felt like, I don't know, I've never been stabbed, but it felt like someone put a knife in my thigh and pulled it out.
Oh man!
I fell down. I was yelling, and then the next couple days it got black and purple. And then it was a minor tear though, so I didn't need surgery.
Wait, what does that mean? Oh, it didn't tear all the way from the...
Yeah, it was, well, I mean, doctor said it was a minor tear. I don't remember what exact muscle tear, but out of the 3, it was just a small tear and enough to get me out for 9 months.
Whoa. So but it basically grows back?
I guess so. I just was doing a lot of physical therapy, icing and stretching.
Did you go back?
Yeah, I still do it now.
Okay.
There's a little mental block sometimes. I'll be sprinting and like it's just there, so I got to make sure I like warm up for 20 minutes. Holy crap. Stretch it out, because I mean, playing soccer my whole life, I was always one to stretch too, and then now jumping into a sport where your body's warm and you're sprinting into the oceen, it's just different. It's not like soccer where you stay warm throughout the whole time.
So you started with sports and then you
just drop soccer for skimming. But from that case, it's important to stretch, because I didn't really stretch, because I mean, coaches would make me stretch, be like, warm up 20 minutes, then sit down 5-10 minutes, stretch up everything, and then game, you start playing. With me, I would literally roll up to the beach and start sprinting. No stretching, straight to
warming up. I think it's the thing. I'm not sure. From what I remember, is that I think that stretching makes more difference than like how you recover. But I'm not so sure that it actually makes a difference in tearing. It might be.
It could have been that. I don't know, man.
It might be like, well, there's like, but it is interesting. I wonder, how do you like, now that you have a little bit more of like an established, like you're more established in your presence in the world of production. Mm-hmm. Is there like a way in which you approach like your day that is more geared towards only production? So in other words, is the majority of your time, like when you think about your day, is it all around production, everything else kind of thing, or is it taking like kind of like you balance it out with your sports and your private life? I definitely try to balance it out. I am always thinking about like the next step for what we're producing, especially for Box Boys. I mean, that's what I run with my brother, but I think it's important to balance out with just your day-to-day things in life, because that's what the skimming is, what fuels me. I wake up, I can't be locked up in a house all week, 8 hours. I mean, it gets to me, being
being in the house all day. And I feel like it's nice, at least for me, it's important to start the day, maybe start for sunrise, get out, skim for an hour or two. I get that fuel, and then I come back, and then I have that energy for the rest of the day and stuff. So it's nice to just balance it out with things like that, working out. And then that's like my fuel of creativity when it comes to the physical side of things. And then I just feel better. So it's not like my blood's constantly running, and then I feel just generally energized, so then my brain's thinking better, I feel better, and then I'm able to work longer too at the same time. Yeah, because I've had moments like the injury that sucked at the same time, but then that's what also was opening the door to the new path. So I didn't really think about the things about just being locked up, working and working, because there wasn't a direct path. That's where I was figuring things out. But now that things are more settled and there's a plan with where we're going, so now it's like, okay, I got to make sure that plan is fueled the right way. So that's where the creativity is fueled by sports and just working out and just day-to-day things to balance my life out. And then I apply it to my work stuff. And then
I think the physical stuff really makes a big difference. I mean, what happens, especially again when you deal with nightlife, like now you started doing events, that whole scene always carries with it certain things, right? Yeah. Drugs, alcohol, all that stuff.
Yeah, insane.
And it's something that I'm assuming you kind of stay away from that, or you
absolutely, yeah, okay. We stay away. We try to use the power that we're growing now to influence into all positivity. So just for me coming out of a bright background with skimming and stuff like that, that's what fuels me, and that's what makes me feel creative and happy. Some people fall into other outlets, and that's where the drugs come in, or that's just it seems normal to them, and it's like, hey, this is my creative fuel, doing these things, but it's like taking them down. It's like that instant gratification that would fuel their creativity, but at the same time, it's like killing them physically, and like
it's limited in its scope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then it's just we try to change the narrative with those kind of things too. Like my brother and I just stay away from these things as much as possible because we're deep in it, so that's all we're around with. But at the same time, like that's why we're in it too. We're trying to change it, like and
this is so great. You because. Yeah, it's a very easy thing to kind of fall into because it's because it's like
everyone's doing it. Like, this big artist is doing it. All his homies are doing it. This looks cool. This is their normal. This is their norm. Like maybe it seems normal to me too, and that's how it kind of falls into a lot of minds, And it's you gotta like stay strong and realize what your path and goal is, because if we have a long-term goal too, we want to just get to the point. I mean, we just want to keep going to the point where we can see how far we can go with our production too. We have our genuine goal with like retire. We want to retire our parents. And all these like little goals my brother and I talk about. But at the same time, once we get to these things, we just want to keep going. That's how we see life, like there's no end. There's no like, okay, this is where I stop now and life's done. So it's just constant learning, constant growing. But at the same time, with that thing, we want to use all that power and just be like, hey, like we can get to this big point and flip it completely. Like we don't need the drugs in this industry or our page or whatever. Like we can literally just fuel it just off straight positive thinking and then just taking care of yourself the right way. So then you can see the results in your work or videos, music, and whatnot.
So if I ask you if you can create out of positivity, the answer is absolutely. There's no...
Absolutely, yeah. It's like I could say that negativity is louder based off like all these falling into bad habits and like the drugs that we just talked about and stuff. But once the positivity is like rewired into people's heads, I feel like that's more efficient. And like for one to speak, like I fall into a path where I've smoked a good amount of weed for about a year. And I would say like, I use this for my anxiety or my stress or my creativity. But at the end of the day, I kind of was just lying to myself, and it was just like more like a getaway for me too at the same time. And now that I'm like completely off and now just replacing it with more working out, eating more, and just general day-to-day physical activities, that's been replaced from like that smoking aspect. I've seen way better results now in my just not even my work, but my productivity and motivation. And that applies to all aspects of my life. And then it goes into work and then just everything, family time, it feels way healthier and just brighter to me in my world too. It could be different for everyone, but that's just what's been working for me on that.
See, this is amazing. Like at that again, it's like understanding that at 23 is a big thing because it's not necessarily even like in the expression that the pain gives to your life, like taking drugs and partying and all that stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with partying, but like in the sense of like just partying into like into the night where like there's this like a different kind of undertone takes over. It's not the same as like, hey, we're out, we're about, we're doing whatever. Yeah. There's this like after party vibe of like people just like show, it's like a different thing.
It becomes the normal for people.
Exactly, but it's not just that. It's more like there's the very long-standing narrative around can you create something truly profound not out of pain? Like you look at comedians, you look at like I mean, look at Bo Burnham's what is it called? The last special they did, and everybody was talking about. You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't kept up with that one.
Basically, I think it's called Inside, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, it was just like everybody else. He was stuck inside, pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
And Bo Burnham is unique in that he's very he started also very young. He kind of has this like weird, young enlightened genius kind of thing. I mean, now given he's not that young anymore, but he started when he was like 14. Like he understood some things pretty early on, and one of the things about this one, like if you watch it, you'll see it's not like. What's interesting about that is that it's so authentic, and you don't get it a lot anymore. And it definitely comes from like him falling apart by himself inside, and you can see that there's like a moment there where he literally just breaks up like in tears. And maybe he acted it out. I don't know. It didn't seem that way.
During his
part of the fucking thing. Like he just fucking straight up started crying. I was like, fuck, like that shit is insane.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, and it was one of the most hilarious things ever. But at the same time, he had this like very deep component of like this internal turmoil of an artist, right? So I guess there was this deeper narrative. And I think there was one interview in which that I remember he was in this show called The Green Room, and he was talking to other like Alzheimer's comedians, like giant names like Ray Romano, and I don't remember who else was there, and they were talking about that, like, can you create not out of pain? And he said, yeah, you can absolutely create not out of pain. You can create out of love, you can create out of whatever, but when you look at his stuff, you can see that the true operator there is this like internal crazy like monster that tries to constantly pull him down, and that's also kind of way. So I guess this is a very, very convoluted way of asking, because you already carry this very positive attitude. Do you now see in your generation less of what I'm describing? Like, do you see more people like you that are taking this more positive attitude towards it from a natural standpoint? Or do you think it's still like a battle that needs to be won? Like this is
I feel like it's a half and half, especially with my brother and I deciding to choose these people to stay around us. Like if I find someone that's thinking like me, or because I don't think there's a right way to do things in life. It's what do you do for what you get your results in life, and if that's what you like, then that's what works for you. And that's what I see. And that's like if there's something that's positive and that's working in that way, we surround it. We make sure we hook onto it and bring these people around us. But then in general, just realizing like the industry we work with, a lot of the minds, it's definitely like surrounded with between just that fueling off like only surrounding off pain, So I do my best to just stay around within that idea of, hey, like we can grab a big team of people and make sure we're fueled off each other. And then with whatever heads we run into, we meet new people. There's going to be those weird negative minds, negative way of thinking, and stuff. And they can be pretty successful, but it's just not also the right ways of them doing their thing too. So I think about these things a lot too. And I'm like, hey, like maybe like I try to be as compassionate and empathetic as possible to understand why are they thinking this way? Why is it that they have to feel so negative and dark, or like maybe even bring others down to make themselves feel better too. And it all kind of go intertwined into each other and why they think that way. But I definitely see it a lot in this generation, and especially in the industry we're into, because it's just everyone's about, at the end of the day, I feel like all humans do things for their own like consent, like everyone's doing stuff for their own best version of themselves. It's just natural human things, Everyone wants to be doing.
You mean like from a selfish standpoint?
Yeah, and that's how I noticed that a lot too. But it's not a bad thing too at the same time too, because everyone does need to focus on themselves. But it get to an extent too, that's where the empathy comes in. And you need to understand other perspectives on why people are doing these things the way they're doing. Because there's a reason why there's criminals in this world. Like, like they do things and that's just their way of doing things, And like it could be right in their world, but why? Like, why is it that they see?
Well, it's their life experience, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's what I think about all the time. So it's like, I try to jump into that perspective of me as jumping from a positive perspective. I'm true to my ground, and I'm always going to stay this way of thinking. My brother's in his own way of thinking. He's his own person too. But we always try to understand, like, why is it that these things are happening, and how can we help? And if not, then we just keep fighting it with positivity, because it's the end of the day that can change their perspective. I was always a positive thinker, but now it's fueled more. Now it's stronger, and it's way more positive. More reinforced way of thinking.
There's a real need for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's not a matter of the right way or the wrong way. I think it's just that over time, like I have this disease where I always, like my brain just automatically does this. I always project whatever we're doing into the larger picture of where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know how Elon Musk, like when people like investors think of like, you see investors like kind of complaining about quarterly or like, oh, Tesla is not doing as great this year. I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like he's thinking like 40 years ahead and like where we're going and the sun will explode. So we need to know how to get off this planet, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously I'm not comparing myself to Elon Musk, but my brain does the same thing in the public, like in the public sphere. Like I watch this and I see like trends and I'm like, okay, it's not a matter of right or wrong. You can do this way and be successful. Is it sustainable both for you? Like over time, are you going to just demolish yourself eventually? Or you're going to have a life that is pretty balanced but still successful? And also the trends you carry with you when you inject it into, like, especially if you become successful, so you project this attitude, so you inspire people to be like you. Is it more sustainable to be this way for society in general? Or is it possible to be positive and still create things that are truly profound and amazing and creative and they feed us in the right direction?
Yeah.
And when I mean right, in the sense that it's more sustainable over time. It feels healthier. There's something about like, actually, and I get a lot of, if most people don't care about this, but if I talk to somebody who really cares about these subjects, they get very upset when I say this. But like, I really think that. I think it's not true that there's no such thing as good and evil.
Yeah.
I don't think it's true. I think there is. I think there's like I think we know. I think there's like a part of us.
Yeah.
I'm not even getting into like a religious thing, but like
there's the morals of it.
There's something in us that kind of knows when something is good or bad.
Yeah.
I agree. You know what I mean? Like when something feels it's not trying, it doesn't have your best interest in heart.
Yeah.
And then there are other things that feel like they're not, pretend feel good, but they're good. They're like kind of feeding this part of you that is really trying to become a thing. And I think that's really an important distinction. That's amazing that you've reached those conclusions at such a young age. And your brother is kind of like you, or is more
it's similar in a way, in that way as well too. And like I said, he's 5 years younger than me, so he's got his way of thinking at the same time.
But what do you mean by that? Like in what way is it different, for example? That's interesting. Different
in a perspective where, I don't know, like I think about his perspectives. It's pretty similar because there's a reason why our bond has gotten stronger. Because as a brothers, our bonds were pretty off before the business.
Oh, so like getting in fights.
For the littlest things. And sometimes, and I've noticed it's gotten much healthier now with about 2 years of Box Boys being alive. And our relationship has been hooked now. So and that's just because we feed off each other's perspectives. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way of me doing my things. It's just what works, And then I feed off him too. And then sometimes he'll tell me like, hey, it's try this, or why don't you view it this way, and that. And he's younger. So I'm like, okay, like I could definitely jump into his head and see why he sees it this way. And this works for me too. And like he's been on this world 18 years and I've been here 23. I've been here longer, but he has his experiences that flip that switch in his head and he brings it on to me. And I'm like, okay, you know what? This is cool. Like I accept that. And like now I'm realizing I need to be more open-minded, especially with you as my partner and my brother. So like I'm open and I love his perspective too. And it's just when it comes to the work side, when it comes to problems, like now we both handle it pretty similarly too. We always find the solution rather than focusing on our problems. And it's just like something we always now we reinforce that and really hook that idea a lot more too. So it's like, I don't know, I see him maturing more too. He's 18. When he's my age, I'm sure he'll jump into new perspectives that change down the road because our priorities will change as we age too. But I love it. I just love hearing to what he has to say at his younger age too, because I think there's a reason why he's bringing his success too on his end too, and he's bringing in the right things to the table. And I'm like, okay, like there's a reason why everything's molding up correctly and bringing in that right next step for Box Boys. And it's like, okay, so why? Let me jump into his head, and that's cool. And then I jump back into my perspective, and he jumps into my perspective. So that's what I'm saying. Like we jump into each other's perspectives, and that's what helps us too.
But also, I think that. Again, nowadays everything is accelerating, so I think that 5-year gap might actually be enough to almost define you guys as almost in a different generation.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about with one of my friends that was over the other night. He said it's like we're still almost under the same high school class because I graduated as a senior and then I was going into college and then he came in into freshman year. So it was like almost there, but it's still gapped huge, a huge gap. 5 years is a big difference. But I think about that because he's under that generation. He's 18 and he's like, he definitely understands the younger kids, and especially with his taste in music and then my taste in music and then just the 5 year gap. Huge compilation of different ideas.
It's that dynamic
It
range.
helps because I was saying like, what if we were both 23 or both 18, both same taste in music? Like the success it'd probably still be there, but it would be in the same route rather than like coming in and then intertwining and then coming back together.
That's amazing when you can work. Yeah,
pulling things from other paths that he would have never gone to, and then he goes into his path that I had never thought I'd ever go into, and then he brings it to the table, and I'm like, dang. And then same with him, and then same with me, and I'll bring it, and then he's like, oh snap. And then we make the decision with what we have on the table there because it's different, you know. Like if
it is, but
it's
by
super
far different. I wonder in what ways that is interesting because you already grew up with pretty much technology since you were born, right? You did
technically, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what year were you born?
98.
98. Okay, so yeah, so I mean, there was like it's not like today, but there was
it's not a massive gap to the point where we like can't understand each other. You know, like if I worked with my grandpa and then me, it's like
no, it's completely different thing. It is interesting. I wonder how do you like? This is a completely completely different turn, but like how do you view, because this is something that you were born with, and you do have a pretty positive outlook on life. There's this there's this techno fear thing with people, obviously with boomers, but then even with millennials at this point, there's sometimes this narrative of there's this fear of the newest things, right? Like Neuralink and things like that.
Like everything coming in, yeah.
What's your the metaverse a little? What's your take on this? What do you?
I like it. I like it because it's just change. You know, like humans are made to be in the constant route of change.
You're not afraid they're gonna herd us all into being sheep?
Being cheap?
Like sheep.
Oh, sheep?
Yeah.
Yes and no. It depends. It's all perspective when it comes down to it. You know, like I see it as like, when the first cars came out and everything, that was probably a huge change. And everyone's like, whoa. And then it's almost like, then when the Wi-Fi came in for the first time, and like the internet, and like that was the next whoa. And then I feel like that's what's happening again now too. It's just a drastic change. But
yeah.
It's just how you want to view it too, like it's a matter of adapting and then pulling it to your own benefit to find some success in it too. Because now there's like instant and huge amounts of opportunities within the internet, and then everyone can just make money off a phone now. So there's like no excuses for you not to even make those dollars now. Like the bare minimum, even just the bare minimum. And if you want to get out there, then yeah, that's when you have to really dumb it down and figure out put a plan out. But even when it comes to little things like back then, like even with just the change of college too. So like back in the 80s, 90s, you needed your degree to that success. That was the door. And now it's just like you have your way of teaching yourself skills and educating yourself skills to get those skills to then apply it to the world. And that makes your money, whether it's anything in the creative industry or just whatever you want to learn. And then there's specific things that are very complex, like being a doctor or a lawyer, where you do need skills still, and you can't just go off doing it on your own. But then technically can, but then you would see your results, and that's probably not the ideal result you want, Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want someone learned off YouTube to give me brain surgery or some shit, like something like that would be awful.
I'm sure it's coming too.
It's probably going to come. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a top surgeon who's going to be like, all right, you're going to follow step by step, and that could be the next challenge too.
I know Kung Fu. I know how to
exactly.
bring a brain surgeon.
And that Neuralink thing could be a thing where you really put hands-on into that metaverse world. But I love it though, because it's just a matter of change that we're always going to be going through. Like even with us, like if you'd stop learning and you stay stagnant, that's in my opinion, that's like you're just dead. Like you got to learn and you got to keep feeling yourself and see something new. And I see it as that because it's just like get excited with the new changes, but don't get lost in a point where it's like, oh my God, they're trying to control us and this and that. No, see the beauty of it. What's the positive side of it? There's new change, more opportunity. There's going to be so much money given out there, and how are you going to hook it? Like see that. And if there's things that you're still struggling with financially, there's more changes. There's going to be more changes, more jobs created off these things. There's going to be jobs in the metaverse. There's virtual things that there's going to be things that you would never expect would be a job or a way to make money. That's how I see it, and it's just explosions of opportunities.
See that's my perception of it as well, and I can never fully get to the bottom of the concern, because it's almost like the concern, there's this whole movement around things like the movie Social Dilemma, and are you familiar? Or it's like
Social Network.
No, Social Dilemma. It's like
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen that one. I've
Tristan
seen that
Harris.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah. Netflix, right?
Yeah.
I've
So
seen
I
that.
watched this. So like I knew about Tristan Harris before I heard the narrative. I heard the concern, which again, from somebody who took, coming from his position, because he was he had like this very unique job description in Google. Was it Facebook or Google? I think it was Google. And he basically was like the philosophy, like the I think something along the lines of like product management philosopher, something like that. Basically, it was like, what are the ethical implications? His job was to decide what are the ethical implications of certain things. So from his perspective, I totally get how he saw how things are run, and it's almost like you're in that culture. Like he was describing this, for example, like that email thing where when you pull it down, then that buffer thing, it doesn't need to be there. It's there to mimic a slot machine, just so you like stay on the screen longer when you email thing, right? So I'm like, I can totally see how that, like, for someone like that from that position, it seems like, whoa, like this is big tech just trying to do this like crazy fucking brave new world kind of thing. But for me, even and he, and kudos to him, because he's in the position of, and also of enough understanding how to do something maybe about it, right? But for the most part, when people say all these things like, hey, they're gonna sell all your data, it's like, okay, but
it's kind of already happening too.
It's also happening, and also, what are you gonna do about it? Like, why can't you focus on what the opportunities bring you? Because in their perception, I guess it's like, well, the more you think like that, that's when they get the upper hand. And it's like, who is they? There's this company trying to make money, right? I'm not saying that people are not never intending anything, because I understand the concern that the companies just want to make money and they don't care as much about what the influence on society is.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll
see
take a dramatic change. But like, it's like, it feels like that concern is misplaced. It's like, there's nothing you can do about it. You will never go back to technology not evolving. This is not happening, no matter what you want. This is just like the natural trajectory of things.
It's only going to get faster and
Only faster, only more opportunities. Like you said, there's going to be more things that you're going to be able to interact with. So why don't you take that energy and inject it into trying to understand those spaces and what you can do in them, and how you can benefit your life and your family's life through them. Instead of, like spilling this thing, which is like, okay, maybe it's true that, there's not all, maybe not all of our goals are aligned with the big tech. But again, what are you going to do about it? That's always my perception of it. I can never get to the bottom of that concern. But I do know that there's this feeling in me that, I guess because I'm more of like optimistic in that sense, that the amount of progress we're going to be able to make with things like Neuralink and the metaverse and kind of combining these things, both politically and socially and creatively, are of a flavor that we truly can't inspect. It's something that we've never even imagined as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
just like the thought of the internet when it first came out, like we couldn't have, like, talking to someone across the world before that. Now it's just that same concept. Now with the Neuralink and the metaverse, it's the next.
But imagine more than that. Imagine, yes, but then imagine like us sitting right now and then having this conversation. But in addition to that, we have this channel in which I can create objects. Like I can create NFTs as we go, right? I can create objects in my mind's eye. They go into this shared channel, and then you can see it in the air, kind of like augmented reality thing. And then I mean something, and then that feeling can be transmitted to you in this way. It has way more like contextual. So it's almost like I can communicate in such a deeper way in which I express something not just with words and hoping you're gonna guess it correctly, but I can project the visual element of it into the air, maybe even like transmit some of the emotion that I'm feeling towards it. Imagine how much more progress you're making in any given moment on any given subject. So I always give this example of like, if a meteor comes right now in like 6 months, there's no way we're making it, right? But if you have like 11 geniuses sitting in a room just thinking into the same space, they can probably engineer something.
Yeah. That super direct into those stuff.
Yeah, they just like instead of emailing each other and like all those like
misinterpretation comes
exactly.
around. Yeah,
and you just like you like
and I would be like I'd say that's the positive outlook of this kind of concept.
And I don't understand like what again for the most part I think it's just like there's nothing you can do about it.
There isn't. It's already going to happen.
Yeah.
So
do you think it's possible that it's that we didn't invent it? Do you think that it's possible that cyberspace is something we stumble upon?
Just out of nowhere, out of the blue?
No, that it already existed. We just found access to it.
I feel so. Did you ever think about that? I feel so. Because there's I mean, I don't know.
Do you think it's possible that we're going to meet aliens in cyberspace that we didn't make?
Could be. It could be. Honestly, you don't know what could, like, I don't know. If I'm jumping into that thought, I'm thinking about it. You never know if someone's already in that world.
Yeah. What if the majority of the universe is actually in already that thing in cyberspace,
and we just caught up?
Yeah.
That could be a thing. That's a good thought. Yeah, I never thought about that.
It's almost like the idea of the Matrix is only the simulated spaces all there is.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like the real world is actually like a little download of the like it's like a subspace.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the majority of the thing. I always think about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I never thought about that, but.
What is the plan that you guys have now with
all this coming in?
No, with specifically with the festivals.
The festivals.
Yes.
So
what is the next big step with the festivals? How do you look at growing the festival? I mean, the obvious things like you're going to combine a lot of your branding and a lot of production stuff with it. But where do you see it grow? What is it?
So. Like the physical side of it, I would definitely love to see with my brother. I would love to have it borderline Coachella size and Rolling Loud size within these next few years. But you know how Rolling Loud has its all rap world, and then Coachella it's like super indie or alternative side of things. Bring those in, but then also with a touch of our approach too, because we have like for example, Trippie Redd, and then or let's say 21 Savage, something like that, and then like Rufus or Tame Impala. Something like that, so we would have them two into it. And then as we grow, I want to also adapt with the new changes coming in too. So for example, with this next fest coming up in June, we're selling normal tickets, but then we want to offer 10 VIP tickets as NFT tickets. So then the incentive for that would be, hey, like you get access to backstage or VIP, and then you can also get those 10 people that buy it also get access to our first virtual metaverse concert, So like these things, we want to also do these things with the actual festival, but then slowly take those steps into what's changing in the world too, and then kind of slowly.
So are you guys doing that? Like in this festival, you're also going to have the metaverse version?
No, not yet. So it's just going to be bringing in that ticket to access for it when we do it though. So those 10 specifically.
You reserve them.
Yeah, that's reserved, and once it's launched, you 10 are in there, and then you get. But meanwhile, for that NFT purchase, the incentive, you would get VIP at our June festival. As that, the second side of it, you hop into our metaverse when it's ready.
That is so sick.
So something like that would be the next step as the growth of the physical side of it, but then with the metaverse, so we're kind of taking it two ways too. But yes, we would love to see it to get to the point where we have 3 stages, 5,000-10,000 people running around, and of course looking out for everyone's safety at the same time.
Do you think they have the technology now to do? I actually don't know. Like I haven't checked the metaverse yet. I'm ashamed to say.
Neither have I, but I've been learning and like just watching it now. But it's time for us to. I even just want to make an account just to jump in and see how it works.
Is it possible now to take your VR glasses and to go into a space? Most of the VR glasses have also augmented reality capabilities, or no? Do you know?
Some. I mean, I definitely have put it on already, and I've messed with it, and I haven't joined the metaverse yet. I've literally just watched videos where it's 3D, or I play those games where you feel like you're actually in there, so you see like your hands in the game.
Yeah.
Which is really trippy to me.
No, I wonder if you can have like when the majority of people are gonna have like the augmented reality part where you go in and then
it looks like
the
this.
Party. Well, it looks like this, but no. I mean like not in VR, but like you go into the real space, but then you paint. Like augmented reality, you add this layer of content for the people who paid the extra whatever, right? So they have like this extra thing, so they get to experience more of the festival
at the same time. Too.
At the same time, Well, also maybe bring people from other places that are not at the festival, but they can feel like
let's
they're
say
there.
someone across the world wants to come, they can't be like, hey, you hop
That's
in
the
there.
amazing part about it.
I guess that would be cool too. So we would have like a live, maybe like a 360 camera at our actual Box Fest.
Yeah,
going
you just
live,
put it in the middle, maybe.
and then they can hop in and they're like virtually there, and they can like move around as like a space.
Yeah, you put a little orange thing around it. People see that you don't knock it over, and then it just go over, and it kind of films the whole thing.
Someone from Europe's like, all right, let's go to Box Fest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't that fucking amazing?
That's a cool thought. So yeah, no, we've thought about that. So my buddy Diego, OC Snaps, he just recently filmed our second Box Fest with his 360 cam, but it wasn't a live. It was just the actual footage. So then he exported it, and then it was all 360, and then I put on the goggles and watched it on YouTube, and I was watching our Box Fest as a 360 world. And like I was on top of our performers and looking at our logo and all the people, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. So imagine it live now, like you're there enjoying it, and then you have another, let's say 15 people also in that virtual reality. You can communicate with them and like enjoy the fest with them in the live side, along with the VR side too. I mean, the VR side with the live side.
No, it's literally endless. Because eventually, like I can already see, you can basically install cameras that are like maybe 360 hanging from the ceiling, so it doesn't interfere with anybody. But and then when you're on the other side, you can literally just by gestures, you can kind of move through, so you can like zoom in and like move
you get the
around
full experience to move around.
Yeah,
maybe with like 6 cameras around, you can like digitally move around.
Yeah,
you know?
no, absolutely. It's almost like you move from this domain of this camera and then it switches to this camera.
Yeah, exactly. So it moves and it just like switches as
because you can't move for each person.
Yeah, exactly.
But each software of the person can figure out the coordinates of where they are in the room in that
kind of
virtual
like the
reality
Star Wars, how they pop up as a hologram, but like obviously not popping up. They're just digitally looking at it.
Oh man, this gets me so excited.
Yeah, man, these are the cool things to think about for the future with
and
music,
it's not even, and that's why I'm asking. Like, the technology seems to be there for not even it being that far in the future. Like within a couple of years.
Soon. Yeah, it's a couple of years and then from there on it'll only get better, clear, and then obviously I think there'll be some errors that we'll have to fix as we go through these things.
How big is the last one that you guys did?
The last one, like the venue or just the capacity?
How many people?
We had 900 people. So with VIP and everything, it was about 1,000 people.
That's insane.
So that was our second festival.
Bro, that's insane. That's amazing.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, the first one was cool too, but that's what set the tone for the second one, and that's where we got.
People can already purchase tickets now?
Yeah, so they've been on pre-sale. We just announced it 2 weeks ago.
Where do you get it? Where do you go?
Dice. So directly to Box Boys through our account, or you could search up Box Fest and then search up Box Fest June 16th, and then that's where you find the tickets. So there's 6 months. There's lots of time.
Okay.
It's tier 1 right now, and then tier 2 is in March, so the prices will go up from there.
Do you feel that you got? Actually, just realized that I didn't think of asking that. Do you think you got this way, or the kind of like more the guidance towards this positive thinking from your parents, or is it?
No, actually, none of it.
No?
A lot of it. Yeah. Okay, sorry to reword this. A lot of it wasn't from. So some small aspects, yes, but most of it was just my general experiences and then what I decided to consume from the online world too. Because there's overloads of information. There's like negative, positive, and with the way of thinking, I think my experiences have definitely shaped my way of thinking. And then now I can even bring it on to my parents, and like they're older now. I feel like my dad sometimes or my mom will be in a certain way of thinking and like the traditional way of like, let's say going to college, finishing school, this and that. But then like I rewire my head and I tell them like, hey, look at this perspective. Like there's no right way, but like check this out. And they'll be like, oh, and then after a while they understand it, they see the results we're getting, and then they're open for it too. So it's just like a matter of being open-minded. But yeah, I think my experiences have shaped my way of thinking more than anything right now.
Interesting. Yeah. So you got it more by your own.
Yeah, because I like literally forcefully had to make sure that I'm the only one that can save myself with my perspective. Because otherwise, if I decided to stay in a slumped negative perspective, then that's all I'm going to see in my world. So then I decided, hey, like, take a step back, rewire, view things differently. Like, that's where you said, like, what are you going to do about it, rather than, like...
I think you said it, but yeah, it's it's brilliant. It's just, like, it's so simple, but, like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Whatever it is.
Everything.
What are you going to do about it?
And it's like,
everything is your own doing.
And then that goes into like finding, like just focusing on what your solution is to anything that pops up in life. Whether it's, I guess, life's about decisions, but when it comes to problems and you consider that your problem, your next step is immediately thinking, what is your solution? Like, yeah, maybe you'll jump into a quick thought like, dang, I should have done this, or man, I'm stuck in this sucks, now I can't do this because of that. Like that has to stop. Like you got to stop thinking like that, and it's like, okay, what's the next step for me to change this and then take 10 more steps ahead of this now? And then like, this is a learning lesson. Everything's a learning lesson to me. And then from there on, it's just always, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? What's your solution? What's your solution? You know, something goes down, what's your solution? No time to waste. You know, that negative, pessimistic way of thinking is so toxic. And there's too many people that get comfortable with that way of thinking, and then you see no growth in that way of thinking too. Because then it's just like, like I said earlier, it's like you see problems and you go through problems and all you think about is your problems, then your life just will become a problem. And that's where I was for 2 years, you know, when I went through bad things in high school and like just life in general, you know, like I mentioned, like just betrayal, life, death, and all this stuff that kind of just destroyed me.
Stuff.
Yeah, it destroyed me. Like death at the same time with all these huge problems. But then I was like, okay, how am I going to get myself out of this weird slump? Like, what am I going to do about it? What is the solution? Now I'll be like, okay, maybe I should just start focusing on healthy habits, slowly taking things step by step and realizing like things won't change overnight. But like if I also decide to stay in this negative, oh man, this is what I have in my life now, this sucks, then I'm going to stay here longer. So I need to really take the step out and step out of that world and view it differently. What's the next step to fix my way of thinking, and why do I feel like this, and so on. And you apply this to the little things, and that makes a huge factor with how the bigger things come into play when you have them in your life. You know, like a big, huge problem, like a real big problem, or just the next big step when something's like you don't expect to work with, and it's just a huge thing you need to manage. You know, there's a way of thinking that helps you work with it better, faster, and healthier.
Was there like a moment that you remember that? Because again, you kind of brushing over this, which, you know, if you don't want to talk about that part, I completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what people can take value from, because everybody are struggling with something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if somebody can take real value from is something concrete, because like sometimes you say all of that, and for you it's very real because you made those decisions. But the person who's still struggling will always say, yeah, but like how?
Yeah.
How do you choose not to be negative? How do you? Was there like any like concrete moment or a specific event that you remember that just made you say, you know what, no more?
It wasn't like a specific day, but it was when I realized my headspace was in a bad space for 2 years, and I realized, damn, I wasted those 2 years. Not even wasted, I would consider that like, okay, I got to experience those 2 years of just that way of thinking. I don't ever want to jump into that headspace ever again. But because of that, I realized, damn, this has been too long. Like I need to find something, and I had to take the power to flip it, like to really flip it. And then that's where I realized the results were different. And this came on to after I had these weird ways and negative ways of thinking for 2 years. That's when I had the incident of my hamstring tearing. Like after that, and that's my way of thinking of like, okay, what's my perspective? That's what helped me pick up the camera and then apply that way of thinking to my life and then work. And so on to this day now too. So when something goes bad at a festival, something goes down with an artist, business goes down or anything, like I'm like, all right, what's the next alternative? Boom, 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 right away, no wasting time. Like that's just how it's
very symbolic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the mind space created a physical. I don't know if they're related. They might be related actually. Created like an event, a physical event that catalyzed this new change.
Yeah,
like, it gave you the opportunity for something.
It was a huge obstacle because that's all I did. I was skimming like 5 days a week, you know, and that was like my happiness, you know. So it felt like the world was like, nah, now it's taken from you, so you can't skim. 9 months, and the doctor was like, don't run 9 months, and I physically couldn't. Even if I wanted to, it hurt. Like it was awful.
Damn.
So then I was like, what's my alternative? What am I gonna do to make that headspace in here feel good still? Like, and then I'm like, all right, I can't physically run, but I'm gonna make that alternative, and that's where I went deep into the camera world, and then production came in, music videos and all this, and then my brother jumped in his world with that, and then we merged it, and now we feed off that and feed off each other. So we just find happiness within like the film and creative part of things, and so on and so on. So we try to inspire everyone around us to be like, hey, when you have problems, make sure you try to view it as like, what's your solution? What's your solution to everything? Like, what are you going to do about this to make the alternative? Like, if one thing fell down, you immediately got to flip your head, and what's the other thing you can replace that to keep going? And then, you know, and then from there on, you fuel yourself, and then you forget about what the problems are, and you're focusing on so much positivity and so much solutions, where that builds you and your character and your mindset and that positive mindset, where all this negative stuff just disintegrates, and then you realize this is the answer for that healthy headspace when that leaves, and then this slowly leaves, like the negative side slowly leaves, you know. And that's just like, I don't know, I see it as that, like if you have a little bit of negativity and you can't directly fix that problem, well then just drown yourself with so much positivity. It's like salt. Think about like water, and you put a little bit of salt in there, you put a little bit of water, you'll still see it. But if I fill the whole, like if I get 5 gallons of water, you probably won't taste that salt once you drink it. You know, it's just going to be slightly there, but it's not going to be completely gone. But it's just overloaded with so much water, and that would be the positive side of it coming in. And that's how I see it now. Like sometimes these problems won't forever be fixed. You know, it's always going to be lingering. But if you just find more things, try new things, more healthy habits, healthier headspaces, generally like drown yourself with more of that, then that little thing is just going to feel like nothing because it'll be diffused. You know, everything's diffused there.
The more I think about what is the actual moment of change, from everything you're saying and also from everything I've gathered in my entire life, it seems that it's not about like that thing I asked you about. Like when people that are still struggling will ask you, yeah, but how? How do you change your attitude? I think the answer to that is annoying but simple. You just do.
Just do more.
It's a choice.
More.
It's a choice. You literally choose to see it that way. There is no, every situation can be either an opportunity or an obstacle. And you decide which one it is.
Exactly.
And it's so trite and it's so, like when you're struggling, it's so annoying when somebody says that, but I think there's no way around that. I think that's the truth. Literally, it's your choice.
It's how you want to see it.
Yeah. There's nothing that can help you understand how to make that choice. You just have to make that choice. I think that's the only way to go about that.
And it's never, I'm not saying it's easy. There's tough moments, but those tough moments can get harder if you choose not to see it in a healthy way. Yeah. That's where I was stuck.
Oh, you're saying you're going to get even more, like it's going to become even heavier.
Yeah, if you just drown in that negative thought and just stay within, you like settle in with that and that's what you accept, it gets heavier, you know, and then it like, yes, time does heal it, but then along with time healing it, if you also view it in that right perspective, it'll be better, and then you'll feel healthier mentally much sooner than expected, and then like I said, so on and so on, by adding just healthier habits into life, and in that case, that's what. So
you just notice what works.
Yeah, really. Notice what works too.
I've had this conversation with actually a guest that I had on the podcast in the beginning, and then he's gonna record another episode soon, and we had a conversation in which he's a very successful business person, and he noticed that much later in life, everything you're describing right now, but like all the baggage, he was saying that all the baggage they kept on from younger age definitely was an impediment to how far his business can go, and he only noticed that, you know, and he made it really big. Right, so he's like he only got to like the next level, the way that you might want to describe it.
Yeah.
Only when he let go of fully. Yeah. Like just commit to, hey, I'm here to create. I have those skills. I've acquired them over time, but nothing will fundamentally change, no matter how good you get.
Yeah.
Nothing will. It's almost like you have this cap.
Yeah.
That is kept there by your attitude. It's like your attitude is putting this roof over how far you can go.
And then it all comes down to, like, to me, a lot of people this scares people, but I just tell myself, like, it's inevitable. We're all gonna die. Why waste it? You know, like, why waste that negative way of thinking? Like, what if I was in a negative way of thinking for 5 years and then I die the next day? Like, hey,
yeah, but I think most people don't really think about death like that. I think that most people, it's hard for them.
Everyone has a weird perspective about that.
Can you envision? Like, do you really see the finality of it, of life, or is it something you understand, but like, do you grasp that you will die, like fully?
Yes. That I grasp. It comes to an end. Like everything now, like the touch, the feeling, the experience we're going through, just it's gonna be done. All this, we don't there isn't a second chance, and I just remind myself, like, hey, there's a reason why I'm enjoying this. I gotta there's no like unlimited amount of happiness we're always going to be surrounded with, but just for fulfillment and self-reward of just doing things, learning things, helping people around you, and then reaching things for your furthest potential. And then from there I was like, hey, like, why don't I want to go for the stars? You know, like, why don't, like, we're all here to be doing something crazy, so why would I want to just settle in and just live an average Joe life? I'm going to die. I don't want to just have this average Joe life. Like, we're all gonna die. Use it for something crazy. And I apply this to my brother, and then sometimes he'll slap me back in the face with that too, and I'm like, dang, like, should I do this? I'm like questioning this. He's like, dude, you're gonna die. I'm like, you're right. I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna do this right now. Like, why wouldn't I do that? You know, and then he hits me with that because I fed it into his head, and then he fed it
That's fucking
back
good.
into my head too.
Should I do it? Yeah, you're gonna die.
Like, why not? Like, this ends anyways. Well, what do you lose? We lose nothing. We lose nothing.
Yeah.
We're all gonna die. Like, it all comes to an end. So, like, why worry about opinions? Why dictate your behavior based off opinions? Like, who cares about Joe Schmo's fucking opinion? Because it's all ends. We're all gonna die. You're gonna be 90 years old, about to die, and you're gonna be questioning, like, I should have done this. So much regret we're like drowning with because of opinions, you know. And this, I think about this now. Do this all now. Who cares about opinions? Because that opinion's not gonna matter, man. We're all gonna die anyways. Like, who cares? Just do what you want.
I guess it's how clearly you can see. Like, how far can you see clearly? Mm-hmm. Like, what you're describing is a very mature way of seeing it, which is like, hey, I understand that this is final. And I understand that literally I embodied the understanding that this is not going to last forever. So why should I waste this moment by not trying at least? Right?
Yeah.
But again, that's not, most people's perception is very myopic. It's very right here. It's very like, hey, what am I getting now?
Exactly. And that goes back into the same thoughts of why would you want to surround yourself with that negative headspace? You know, to keep you down. Like, it's like, why think negatively when there's only one time in this life?
Well, so, I can imagine why, but again, it's like stepping out of that is like tough. It's that clarity. It's that clarity of like seeing like the not marrying yourself to.
And it wasn't easy. Like I said, it took me about 2 years, man. I was like in a weird head, like just negative, pessimistic. I was super pessimistic for 2 years. Everything I was doing was just negative. I was like mad at everything, and I was like sad about everything.
Well, it takes people 40 years, man. So 2 years, so you're good. You're in good shape. That's amazing. I'm honestly, I wanted to talk to you about the creative process and everything else, but like that somehow is even way more interesting because seeing someone relatively so young adopting this attitude fully and letting it be kind of like the guiding principle from which they create and also actually manage to run something that is successful and moving in like a business. That is so encouraging because it's huge.
It's a huge factor to why we're doing what we're doing now. From like this perspective, what we just talked about with like the death stuff, the motivation perspective, it all comes down to why we're doing this. Like why you see the way it is because of the way we think now. You know, the initial part of thinking shows our results with our Box Boys stuff, and that's like it all comes from our headspace and like what we want to see, how we see things in a positive manner or not. You know, everyone's different with that. But then that shapes your reality, and that's why Box Boys is the way it is. And like, there's so much energy from my brother and I being pushed out into the world from our heads. You know, this is coming from my brother's head and my head, 2 heads coming in, and now it's shown into the world, and people feel it, people see it, people understand it in our music videos and our festivals, and that's just what that's what I'm trying to use this power that we're gaining to get that voice out there that way, and then help the younger generation. Because I notice there's a lot of young kids coming to our festivals. We make them all ages, you know? So there's like 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds.
That doesn't create issues?
No.
Like 1,000 people? There's no like, no weird energy or?
No, not at all.
Like, how do you handle security? Like,
so we have like official venue security and then our security. So make sure we like, just like general music festivals, like we have everyone patted down, making sure everyone's safe and stuff like that. And we're learning as we go too. So it's one one that has experienced general music concerts and festivals. Like, I paid attention to how those things work, but obviously as a 2-man team, and like we got to make sure we can do the most with what we can with budgeting and bringing in the right safety for everyone at first. You know, that's the biggest thing for our festivals, because if it wasn't for the people showing up, it wouldn't be a thing going on. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be Boxfest. It would just be a bunch of artists within each other. You know? So
you're kind of limiting yourself.
The crowd, the fans, that's what makes us. So they're the priority first, then the artists, and then everything else. So their experience is the number one priority. Along with the experiences, their safety. So making sure like we can provide the safety, whether it's water, security, making sure no one's going through any bad things at our festival too. So it's hard when it comes to like 1,000, 10,000, 50, like a lot of instances. There's been festivals where things go down and stuff. Those are the issues we got to figure out. What's the solution to figure this out? You know, like we got to make sure every single life in this festival is taken care of.
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
It's tough, but because
it's a numbers game. The more people you have, the more chances of something going wrong. And over a certain number, there's no way something is not going to go wrong. So you kind of have to just swallow that. Yeah. Let me shift gears a little bit. Let me pick your brain a little bit about your actual like step-by-step creative process when it comes to you approaching a project. Because you already kind of like you know, you had some experience with producing, you have some experience with shooting and editing and creating events. When you get like a project now, do you approach it from the beginning, from like this holistic perspective? Do you kind of like, if it's a music video, do you sit down with like absorb the artist, the music, that whole thing, or do you just kind of roll with it and you pick up the details as they come to you?
I think it's a mixture of both of those. So like, I love feeling free with it. It depends on the project. So sometimes I'll get the go call of like, hey, take full creative freedom. And then if not, sometimes they'll give me ideas like, hey, I wanted this look, this color, this idea, this vibe and theme. So then I build it off that structure. And that's where I also enjoy that too. But when it's just like, hey, choose your song and create whatever you want, think of something. That's always great too, because then from there on I listen to the song, and sometimes I have different moments, you know. Sometimes I'll listen to the lyrics and I'll create the story or the theme and visual based off the lyrics. Or sometimes I just listen to the sound,
the vibe,
the feeling of it. And I'm like, okay, there's any direction. I could take this in any direction. Literally, I can create a weird story based off something completely off from what's being said, but it's just like, it complements it, you know, sometimes. And that's how I initially start too. So it's between those two choices of having like jumping in theme with the lyrics or just jumping in theme with how I feel of the sound, you know? And like from there on, I'm like, okay, I want this shot and this and that, this kind of theme, these scenes specifically, these shots, and it's just like something new always. I've always want something new. Even if it's been done, like how is it new to us too? And then we give it a different kick and touch.
Oh, you mean like a concept that already exists out there?
Yeah,
sometimes how can you remake it, basically?
Sometimes like that, because there's so much out there that's already been done, but then at the same time, like the fun part of it is like, all right, how can we make this different? Like that's the goal, you know, whether we have no budget or all like a max budget, how are we going to use the power of creativity to make it a little different, you know, rather than what's already repetitive and what's being done out there. And then from there on, it's just, that's my start on. So yeah, listen to the sound. And then from there on, a lot of it now at this time is just improvised shooting along with the directed notes too that we have too. So it's a mixture of both. And then that's what gives it the fun at the same time on set.
Yeah, because it's kind of like discovering I know when I edit, I like to do that. I like sometimes,
yeah,
I would just watch the whole thing.
Yeah,
I would just watch the whole thing. And then sometimes I would let those like happy mistakes happen.
Yeah, those are the best. The accidents. Because then sometimes you do structure it so well with the shooting and the actual production part of the physical part of being in person with how everything goes. Then you bring it back to the editing part. And then that's where I sometimes improvise a lot, you know, like it's like, oh, let's try this and see how this goes. Like sometimes half the ideas are there. And then for the rest of the video, it's just like, okay, let's try this and see how this looks. And then boom, that's way better than an idea I could have never thought before.
Yeah. There's this video that I saw one time of, they were talking about editing, and the woman who was talking, she's like some world expert on editing somehow. But anyway, she said something very interesting I never thought about before. She said that there's three people involved in an edit. There's the story, there's you, and then there's the final product. They're all people.
Yeah.
And if you don't look at your edit as a person, you're missing a giant chunk of what it is. Sometimes that person is trying to tell you what he or she is. Yeah. So it's almost like they're giving you hints. They're like, hey, did you try this?
Once you try this?
Because and you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. And then sometimes it shifts your entire perspective of what this thing even is, even though you thought you had an idea of what it is.
And sometimes the hardest part is just even starting it. Like you're just like, okay.
Well, starting it is obviously. Okay, but that's why I usually, when I have that problem, what I do, I usually just would watch it like a million. Somebody died. Yeah. So it's like, I would watch it like a million times. And then like at a certain point, I would just be called to cut somewhere. I would be called to make this thing match with this thing. And that's how I start. It tells me what it's trying to be. But sometimes it's like those happy accidents in which it's like, it would do a thing or a cut in a place that I would never think of it. And sometimes it would be...
it happens.
It would be like your finger would slide by mistake there.
Yeah, literally.
And all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, I would never think of that. That's fucking insane. Yeah. And then you stay with that, and also you kind of learn something. You now know that
accidents are very beneficial when it comes to editing.
Yeah. Well, I think
even shooting sometimes too,
I think in all artistic things, like my girl, she's an artist, and like I don't know if you can see over there. I'll show you after. She painted this thing in one afternoon. That fish, you see it over there?
Yeah, the gold and black.
So there's like pixelated area on the fish, and every person I show it to, they're like, "Oh my god, I love the pixels." Yeah. I'm like, and that was a complete mistake. She would just fucked up the eyes, and she just made like little pixels.
Yeah,
there. It was like,
that's the best.
That's the best part of the piece.
The accidents are the best. Yeah.
The accidents are the best because they always have something there. So you're not religious, right?
I grew up with a religious background and I respect everything, but as of now, I'm kind of just going with the flow.
Like Catholic or
Yeah, Catholic.
Okay.
But I definitely think I've kept the morals. Like I adopted all the morals of just like being respectful and like I never looked down on any religion either too. But I always question. I'm like more confused on what's going on. You know, like what is this? So, like that's how I see it.
Yeah, what is this? I think is a very healthy attitude to have about this.
I'm never like this is what it is and this is how I see it. Like your perspective and your religion wrong. Hate it.
Well, not even that. It's just in
like that.
I think just in general.
Yeah.
Like not even about the specific stories.
What would you call it when you question like? Because I know atheist is when you're like for sure like I don't believe in anything, right? But what is it when you're like
agnostic?
When you're not sure, right?
Yeah. I guess
I
like
would say
agnostic.
that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the only attitude you can keep, like in any honest way, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's a weird. So I grew up. My grandparents were like exact opposite. Like my grandmother was a devout Christian. She was pretty religious, which I actually recently discovered only happened in the last maybe 7 or 8 years of her life. But I guess for me as a young kid, like it seemed forever. And my grandfather was a physicist, and he was an atheist, and also I grew up I was born in Russia, and then I moved to Israel when I was 7. So I saw those two different cultures kind of dealing with those big questions. So for me, it was very obvious that immediately that there's like different ways of looking at it, right? Maybe it was, that was part of the blessing.
Yeah.
But I don't know how now I kind of flip in between, I went to the stage of like being completely like, hey,
religious.
Why would the other way, like why would you think there's anything, like there's no evidence for that, that whole thing, right? But then I softened up a little bit simply because I had some life experiences. Like I started meditating, I did some psychedelics, and I saw some things that I was like, I can't say that I'm sure about anything anymore, right? Yeah. And it's like, and now it's very obvious to me that you can't really, even if you're very, very married to the idea that, the physical world is all there is, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But to say that there's nothing that it's okay to say that you don't think there's anything outside of what this universe is. That's fine. But the fact that it's so empty, right? The chances of us being alone in this entire universe are like slim to none.
Slim, yeah. There's gotta be. I think of that. I'm like, there's gotta be something.
That's so weird, right? That's way weirder than aliens existing. It's way weirder than if we're alone. So, if we don't see anything, like, okay, so where is everything, right? But then having the perspective of a physicist that says, hey, we understand all the building blocks that make the thing that's called the standard model, which basically makes all the particles that we know of. Even if you're like at the highest accolade of being in that world, how can you possibly say with full confidence, full stop, there's nothing outside of this that we see? Like
just this.
That's just great. Like how can you know that?
That for sure I do like agree with too. Like you can't. The fact that you just say that this is only
you can't like if you're in your right mind, you can't say I know. You can say I'm certain to a very high degree because of whatever. But some people are just so certain. Anyways, my point is that everything you're saying, like for example, came to me later in life because I interacted with certain concepts, like the spiritual concepts, and like things became a little clearer through that. But you're saying that you are just learning through your own experience and you're just keeping this positive attitude. There was nothing that happened that was like along the lines of having like some epiphany or anything. It's just you see what works in your life, like towards those attitudes. So, but as far as you can tell now, your belief at the moment is that when you die, right? There's no like.
In my opinion,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, my opinion. I think the feeling. There's no feeling actually, but the moment of what you felt before you were born. There's just nothing.
So it's like there's nothing.
I feel like you just go back to that. You're. This is our timeline from you're born till the end of death, right? So before this, it's just like space, eternity, nothing. This is where we are now, like the gap, and then I feel like we go back to that, back to where we were.
Yeah.
Like the feeling of just what you had before you were born, I feel like we enter that again.
Yeah.
And then we just...
I mean, it would be an amazing surprise if that's not the case.
But I mean, who knows? I honestly don't know. That's just my opinion. I'm like, that could be it.
Yeah.
But it could be something else. Then we could probably just be levitating somewhere, or who knows? Maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm always open for that.
You know, the most amazing thing to me is that whenever scientists talk about, like, with that amount of certainty about, like, they know there's nothing like that, and there's nothing after death, and there's nothing. And then, oh yeah, but in the same breath, they would say, yeah, but also there's like 90% of the universe that we can't see, which is dark matter and dark energy. It's like,
yeah.
Doesn't it tell you something? That if you can't fuck... Like, no, but we have candidates. So I was like, great, but you don't know what it is. But like, not even a little bit. No. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
It's an interesting thought. Like, I feel like no one really knows. Unless, I would say maybe the people that have maybe been close to death and they've been revived, like, how do they feel?
Some people, yeah.
How does that feel, you know?
Well, I don't even know if that, like, because a lot of people talk about that, like that experience, right?
Yeah.
Or that they have, some people talk about like they have like recurring dreams or things that they kind of see. But I don't know, even from that side, I don't know if you can say anything, again, with any amount of certainty that you understand. You know, some people would say things with a straight face, like, you know, I had some experiences with some guides from the fifth dimension. I'm like, how do you know it's the fifth dimension?
Yeah,
the sixth dimension. It's like, why did you add the fifth dimension part?
Why,
it's like,
exactly, yeah.
Hey, I met some, you know, I had a dream about this thing that felt very real, and I got this message. I can get behind that. Mm-hmm. But when they start getting specific, you know what I mean? It's like,
and that's the only way, you know?
It's no. It's just like the when they say things like the fifth dimension.
Yeah,
it's like, how do you know that that's like what's your gauge here? You know, that also kind of drives me crazy. It's the emptiness, but then to you it's like, okay, but that makes this part is a gift. Like, let's just enjoy this part as much as we possibly can.
It's like, it's the now, you know, like those thoughts are always going to be those. We're always going to be thinking about those thoughts, like what's happening after. But
do you ever get this experience that something like we talked about those happy accidents when you're editing and stuff?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like some coincidences that happened and you're like, is someone following me? Like, did it ever happen to you? Like, things aligned in such a way that you're like, this is crazy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Maybe not that exact aspect of, like, being followed, but...
Well, not followed in the sense of, like, paranoia, but,
like,
in the sense of, like,
you.
something is almost, like, noticed that you're doing this thing, and then, like, kind of either gave you a hint.
It grants you...
Or grants you an access to something, or...
Yeah, dude, definitely. I agree with that, because... I don't know, I've had a lot of moments, specifically, let's say, my example with the filming side of things, I had these two artists in mind. There was this one artist called Rufus, and then Puya, and this was about 2 years ago, and I would write it down, whether it was digitally on my phone, I'd be like, hey, I want to film for these guys, I don't know how, somehow or other it's going to happen, but within the past 6 months, those two people came into the picture. But it was...
In what way?
In the way of just, like, how I thought about it so much, and then it was connected through the people that I know, and it was the most surprising way, because it was the people I least expected that would bring me onto that. And I'd be like, dang, now I'm here with my brother, and this is what I've always wanted to, and it's like, how far can I go with this kind of way of thinking?
So just place your mind there.
Yeah, and I feel it there, and it's like, I feel like everyone, like, it's like you write it down and you really say it to yourself, and it's like the way you speak to the world. And, you know, and it brings it back to you, and like people understand that sometimes, and then they hop on the same path with you, and that's just like, it's all one accumulation of where you're going, and then boom, you're there, and then it's like, all right, then you help others understand that way of thinking, and then it's like everyone's on that path. But it all comes down to like where you're going for yourself too, you know. But yeah, then I do feel like there was like a mini guide, you know, something was like pushing it there.
Pushing it, yeah.
It's like, what is it? But like, dang, like it's actually happening now. Like a lot of full circle moments happened where I like had my first concert at like 16 going to Hippie Sabotage, and then my first time, like that was my first concert ever, and then next you know, a year and a half later, I'm in the same venue, filming the same artist, Hippie Sabotage, for the same exact set that they had, except this time instead of being in the crowd, I was on stage with them filming for the two brothers.
That's fucking.
So insane. I was like, those two, like things like that intertwined. And I'm like, how? Like how did this happen? But of course, it's my way of thinking that got me there. But I feel like there was.
Well, I'm not so sure, and this is why I'm asking, because I think that in the end there must be an answer, right? So like either we're gonna know that answer or not. I always think about it like this. Whatever this is, like the thing that people describe as like the law of attraction or whatever it is, you put your thoughts into the universe a certain way, you don't demand it, but you you insist on it emotionally enough,
you
then
ask
all of
for
a
it.
sudden it just kind of like comes into fruition, right? So there's two options here. One, it's our way of rationalizing it, and kind of like we reverse engineer the thing after it happened, and right? But I think it just, I don't know, man. The more I live and the more this kind of thing works for me, the more I'm not so sure that it's just happenstance. And if it's not, then the other option is there must be a mechanism here. Something is actually happening that causes these things to align or causes these things to kind of come into view, or all of a sudden this thing happens that you never thought it would come your way, but because you believed in it enough, it's not like your work didn't have anything to do with it. Of course, you had to work hard, you had to hone your skills, you had to meet the people, you had to do all those things.
All that.
But it doesn't mean that the people all of a sudden had to show up, like you said, like through people that you didn't expect, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, and maybe it is, I don't know, but it sounds from your story, it's not like you called them up.
Yeah, it wasn't direct to them.
Yeah. It's just they came to you after you did all the things on your side. You kept your end of the deal, and they kind of came into the picture, and that's the thing that you kind of want, and then you move on to the next thing. Okay,
exactly. How can what else? What's next?
So that's my point. Like, if there's a thing behind the scenes, then there's a thing behind the scenes. And my contention is that if there is one, then we must have a way to understand it. Just like we understand how particles interact with each other.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that. I don't think that if there's a thing behind the scenes, it will forever be hidden. Just like we didn't understand radio waves and we didn't understand how, like wind worked at a certain point.
Yeah.
At a certain point, we will understand, if there's a thing there, we will understand, hey, when we'll be able to scan your brain and say, hey, when you're in that state long enough while you do the work or whatever, somehow it opens those portals to those possibilities. And now it just sounds like insane talk, right, as far as science is concerned. But I don't see any reason why this would not be a real science of understanding of some portion of the world, if in fact there's a thing operating there. And if that's the case, is that place like existing all the time? And I don't know. And are we part of it when we die or not? That already I think we will always be able to only speculate. I don't think we'll ever like have an answer until we actually pass away. But I think it's so interesting to me because I see so much resistance on one side to this idea, and I see so much clinging to that idea from the other side without any need or want to ever like truly be able to explain it. People are just like, hey, it works for me, I don't care. You know what I mean? That's kind of like where I am. I'm surprised by both sides, I guess.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more thing, and then we can, start closing it.
Sure.
If you would have to guess, do you think that you would reach similar conclusions and get a similar life trajectory even if you wouldn't have, if you wouldn't have the hardships that you've had? Do you think you would have other hardships that would steer you in that direction? Or do you think even without any of the substantial hardships that you have to go through, you would still land on these things? I know it's kind of like weird to speculate on something like that, but do you feel like, is this something like that you programmed to be? Or do you feel like you had to kind of battle your way through those understandings and make
if it wasn't for the hardships, correct?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I feel like that's where it comes into us, like, for example, us even taking the initiative to have the voice to speak that way of thinking into people, like without them going through it, could be a factor of that exact idea or question that you asked there. Because, like, for me, obviously, I went through my hardships to get my way of thinking. But, for example, let's say someone that's just fresh into what's going on in their life and they want to do certain things, and I'm here guiding them and saying, hey, like, just try your best to view it this way before you even go through it to get ahead of it or something before. Because then if you are, I think experiences are the best way to learn. But let's say you don't go through these certain experiences, but you want to get to there with this way of thinking. I feel like, yeah, it's definitely a little harder because you're trying to almost like perceive the world differently before you've even gone through things, and that it's like it seems a little tough. But same with me, like now that I've gone through those three things, but I'm also going through a bunch of things I've never gone through. Like now there's a bunch of new things, there's a bunch of change, there's lots of things to adapt with, and I haven't been going through much hardships now because of the way I've been seeing it, And it's
which should be also a little hint.
Yeah, exactly.
Where when you change it, all of a sudden the world doesn't resist you so much.
Yeah, exactly. I still have a whole life to go through, but not saying that I have I don't know. I don't have all the answers, of course. Of course I don't.
Oh, wait. No?
No.
I thought this is why I wanted to have the conversation.
It's I don't know. That's a tough one for me because I think about that and I'm like, maybe without those hardships, I don't know if I'd be where I'm at right now.
Are you actively, when you're saying speaking to people, are you actively expressing them in festivals and?
Yeah, I use even though it's a small scale right now, I use most of my social media to help people reamp or rewire their headspace into a positive way of thinking. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's the positive thing to get results they want to see. If you want to see certain results, well, you got to change the way. You want something different, you got to think different too. It's not. Yeah. You can't be stuck in this way of thinking and then expect this to pop up magically. You got to flip it completely and really, change the fabric of what your mentality is and then from there on, that's where your reality looks a little different. And then you get this different results and different actions will create all those things to pop up in your life differently too.
So it's something that you're actively paying attention to. And
yeah,
really
now I am, exactly. Okay. So I'm not going through more hardships to be okay, boom, now we rewire this and this. Now it's okay, let's just think this way. And anything that comes in is just because of the way I want to see it now before the hardships are even here. So it's I'm going through these now and it's what thoughts am I going to really drown myself in? Aside from the hardships coming in, let's say before the hardships come in, what am I going to do now to get myself ahead of the curve or ahead of my time before it even pops up in my life? And then when it does pop up, I'm all right, cool, brush. It's like a walk in the park.
Oh, I saw it coming kind of thing.
Almost in a sense, but it's I'm almost prepared for it. It's almost I sometimes for example, I could imagine since death is inevitable, but let's say my close ones all would die tomorrow, and I'm almost I'm not. You never know when it's coming, but it's almost you're preparing yourself, but not at the same time because you don't know when or how. But it's okay, my headspace it's got to be ready for the change. That's what it is now, rather than going through the hardships and be okay, the change is here, and then now what it is. So it's be so on my feet that it's okay, the change is about to happen. Or it could happen next week, next year, but my headspace is just moving for always something different, And then,
but you're no longer concerned with it. You just kind of absorb it for what it is, and you develop the tools to basically.
Yeah, exactly, in a sense. But I don't know. That, like I said, that is a weird one for me because the hardships.
No, it's a very speculative one.
Yeah, it's definitely the hardships that made me think the way I think now. Everything I went through now. But going back to that, let's say if people weren't going through the hardships to get them through a way of thinking to where they want to get to. I would say just really jumping as deepest as you can into just trying new perspectives and then trying new things and see how your world looks a little differently before hardships come around too.
Yeah.
Because it's just a matter of putting your mind into thinking of certain things and then viewing different results without hardships hitting you first,
Right.
Because that's where I am now too. It's just a matter of just trying shit. Because before I go through more hardships, I think
it's always trying shit. It's not. It wasn't that. It wasn't what life would look like without hardships. It's more I wonder if there's some programming that is inevitable in us, or is it truly up for grabs and we are really the authors of our own fate.
Yeah, exactly.
We fully decide how it's gonna end up.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that, and then just fully being in love with the aspect of failing.
See, that is a huge one.
I love it. It's part of the journey, and I love it. I love rejection. I love the no's.
It's why was I rejected? Yeah, why didn't it work?
Exactly.
What can I do to make it actually work next time? That's how you.
I love that more than winning, because then that gets me further. The wins are cool, and but that's the rejection and fully revolving my mind around the no's, the rejection, the failing, around that. That's what got me further too, and that's. I guess sometimes I create my own way of hardships in that state, and that would be just falling in love with that aspect, and that's my hardship.
Wow.
It's just really, really being okay with the no's and what doesn't go your way is technically going your way, and then you fall in love with that. You fall in love with the no's, rejections, and then skyrocket with the next result, with the next step.
So I want to close with exploring a little bit of your personal taste, just something for a little bit more fun.
Personal taste.
Oh,
yeah.
First of all, in music, do you have a favorite music or?
Yeah, surprisingly, everyone thinks I'm deeply involved with rap being my taste. I love rap, but for me, I would say more house and alternative. It's really off from what I work with, but I would more Rufus, a lot of stuff like that. I don't know if you've heard of Rufus.
The Rufus sounds very
Rufus
familiar.
Du Sol, like
I think I've seen like the name. I just don't know.
they're Australian. It's a group of three, but it's just different. It's very euphoric.
Huh.
But lots of
is it like deep house or
no? I would say
like gold cap
slow,
kind of thing, or?
like dreamy, euphoric, slow house. You know, like a lot of dreamy music. And like
interesting.
Psychedelic house would be like an explanation. Like
interesting.
A lot of psychedelic rock as well too. I love that. Like Tame Impala.
What? So okay. So I was about to ask, what do you define as psychedelic rock? Is it like back then, also like Pink Floyd and things like that,
Pink Floyd, yeah, I would consider that too. Like Pink Floyd, Tame Impala, a lot of the. I've been finding more of like underrated bands too, and like still getting like Pond. Just a lot of interesting names that I'm finding out that run into that psychedelic taste of.
I'm
just
always
rock
down
side.
to like find new things. I should probably get a list from you from what you're.
Yeah,
you're
I could definitely
exploring.
send a playlist, but I would say psychedelic rock and house are my top, and then from there on it's rap. But working with rap has made me love rap way more than I already loved it.
And probably understand it a little more.
Yeah,
is that like
exactly.
like rap or R&B or like most of
rap,
the underground that you
not R&B, a lot of underground, and then like I would say a lot of the underground rap is what I'm more listening to. A lot of the younger heads, lyrical rap as well too. Something like Puya. I don't know if you heard of those names.
No.
Or Suicide Boys, something like that. That's
That
when I was
sounds
first getting into it, when it was like their underground time. When I was like 18, 19 listening to that. But then now, 3 years later, I'm still into that same scene, but there's a lot more new heads popping
I actually don't know a lot about what happens in the rap world nowadays. I mean, back in the day, I was a little bit more versed, but like, you still have this kind of like very clear-cut difference between, what East Coast and West Coast rap is, or the lines are getting a little more blurred because of social media?
I feel like it's blending in differently now too, especially before social media. I would say the East Coast and West Coast obviously had its own sound, but now that it's all just one world of social media, it's like all the styles are getting put into one, and then people are just getting creative with how they want to.
Would you be able to pinpoint now if an artist coming from New York and you would be like, oh yeah, this
almost a little bit. I feel like it's still in a good transition point where you could still tell, But right now everyone's kind of seeing what's working, and they think that's the right option. Be like, hey, we're doing this music now. This is where we're gonna jump into this style, and that's why I feel like everyone kind of jumps into one. So I don't know. I encourage just doing what you think is right. Don't follow what the crowd and the biggest heads.
Oh, I was just wondering, would you taste it?
Yeah. That's why I stick with my. I'm like, I still put out work that's like EDM, house, and psychedelic rock, and I'm like holding those stomping grounds still, along with holding.
Why don't you do more in that space too? Like, or you do?
I think I definitely do, but for Box Boys itself, right now the way it's growing is under the underground rap scene. And I feel like we're gonna go in phases.
Got it.
So right now it's the rap scene, and then slowly we'll put in some psychedelic rock in there, or some indie alternative, and then see how the fans like that, and then from there on, and we just skyrocket with everything. Because like I said, when we do our festivals, I want it to be like Rolling Loud and Coachella put into one, and then with Box Fest implemented in there too. So it's like a mixture of our own taste.
Interesting. You said that Rufus is Australian, right?
Yeah, they're Australian.
Do you have a lot of that going on in the U.S. right now, or
like that scene being here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that they were pretty close, like second to headlining Coachella.
Really?
So they're fairly big too. Yeah,
Okay.
They have a good amount of people for their shows. They have like 60, 70,000 people. I would say.
Oh, okay. Because the U.S. seems to be keeping loyalty to like rap and rock.
Yeah, it's mainly around
For
that.
some reason, the like electronic music as it is, like in Europe and
Kinda
the
like-
world,
in the U.S.
it just there's like refusal to kind of adopt it on a mass scale for some reason. I don't know why.
exactly.
It is a weird thing. I
And that's
don't know
why I don't know. Personally, I just enjoy it, and I'm aware that it's not out there like at a big scale, and that's
No,
why.
but
I'm
it's
just-
huge in the world though.
But it is. In
It's
the
so
world.
weird.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the U.S. You would say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an interesting outlook with that too. But I appreciate it still as much as I love it. But like I said, working here in the U.S. and then working in the underground world, that's where we're finding our success. But I'm glad I love the rap world too. Like otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it with my brother. He's deep in love with the underground rap scene, and I also love it. But I know it's not as much as he loves it. Because he's really hooked in, and I'm like definitely hooked from the side, like hooked on really well. And I enjoy a lot of the songs, support a lot of the artists, and I work with these artists, and I love it. But then at the same time, I'm also being diverse with every other style that I want to work with as a creative to expand my taste and everything, whether it's my taste and then bringing it back to my work. But the taste in music has to do everything with just how I feel good about what I listen to. And, like that's where the house comes in, psychedelic rock. And then I've done work with it. And then I'm just still keeping my toes tipped in there, not insanely amounts of it, because it's just, if you think about Box Boys, it's like everything. If you think about Box Boys right now, rap comes to mind, The underground rap
That's what
scene.
they're associated with.
Yeah, that's what we're associated with as the company from Box Boys. But then we want to change the narrative as we go. But it's like I said, it's going to be by phases, you know? So it's like, that's where we're going to come out from. And then from there, we're going to have the power to go in any direction and then put on what we like once we have that bigger voice.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. And like I said, when we were talking off camera, I think you should definitely give like some of the music creation a go. I feel like something really cool is going to come out of that.
I feel like it'd be cool. Maybe producing too or something like that.
Yeah,
Producing
and even especially if it's like you're saying electronic music, I feel like the entry point there is a little easier just because there's more accessibility as far as like you can just create things on the computer versus
everyone has
like
access to these tools.
Learning, you know, instrumental. It's like it's way hard.
Yeah,
I feel. I don't know. I might.
Yeah, I think so too. Coming up with a sound from scratch, you know, it's kind of tough to think about. But then once you get practice, I feel like it's just like editing too. It's like how are you going to create these insane visuals from scratch? But I think for me, it's from the practice that it's like you mold it. You know, some people have the trouble of fluidly making a nice, insane like. I don't want. It depends on the style and vibe of the song too, but it's just. I mean, more practice you get, the more like the better results you see.
Yeah.
What works for you too. It's all subjective.
Well, listen, Giovanni, I got to tell you, like seriously, like I'm so happy that I asked you to do this and you agreed because I said it in this interview already, but it really stands out to me like how exceptional it is to have someone your age already doing the things that you're doing on the level that you're doing them, and you're only going to keep growing. And the fact that you keep holding this positive vibe and you actively trying to bring more of that into the world and kind of set an example, it's so encouraging to see in general, but also from a personal standpoint. So I thank you for doing what you're doing, and I'm very excited to see what you're going to come up with. Let me ask you one last question before we go. If you wouldn't, well, I guess you know it's a little bit of a contrived question because I think that if I would be asking this someone who's already way older and already kind of had their career, then I like the question of like what would be your alternative ego? Like what do you think your alternative ego would be doing in a parallel universe? But you're just in the beginning of this thing and you want to develop it. So I think the question might fall flat because like, hey, I'm just developing this thing. I don't know. Is there like another adjacent interest that you have that you feel like you would
like
be able
to
develop it just as
what I'm doing now, right? I think I would. I think what made me really hop into the camera thing was just like you said, going back to the roots of just trying things. Because if it wasn't for skimboarding, I wouldn't even be here right now, too. Literally in this exact spot right now. That's all from skimming led me to the camera, to the music world, and so on. And that's just from trying things. It's just a matter of saying, yeah, let's go try this. Because a friend of mine in high school was like, you want to try skimming? I could be like, nah, I love my world. I'm stuck in my world. This is what I do, only what I do. But try things, you know? You got to try a lot of things to then realize what else you could fall in love with. You could be super good at making music, but then you try something else and you could be the next like super successful person in this aspect of this business, you know? So it's just a matter of trying things because that's something you'll try something and then it'll hit you with a curveball and you'll start doing other things and you realize, whoa, I love this. And then you go deep into that. So I feel like I wouldn't know what exactly I would hop into. I think it would be just more into the surf world, maybe more sports, because that's also what I like. But then going into deeper sports, it could have led me to other things that I would also find interest. But it's a matter of, I would say sports. I would deeply be involved with sports if it wasn't with this. Like soccer, maybe I would be more into that, or surfing and skimming.
But exploration is your superpower.
Exploration, the ability to keep learning. That's because then you have something you can fall in love with at all times. There's always something to explore. Because that's how I found this, the filming side of things, is just from exploring skimming. And if it wasn't for skimming, I would have never been doing this, you know? Camera would have never been in my hands if it wasn't for that sport.
Always explore. It'll bring you everything. That's an amazing.
That's what brings things to the picture, and you just don't know what you can fall in love with.
Bro, thank you so much for this. It was such a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. Good talk today.
And hopefully we'll do it again.
Absolutely, open for another one. A few years from now or so, we'll come back to this.
Yeah, when we'll be already famous.
Yeah. Things will be different for sure, bro. I'm excited for the next one.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Really,
awesome.
Dude, this is